There's some games I absolutely love that I feel like people maybe have heard of but haven't given a chance. And I just want to share these games and explain why to you that I think you should give them a shot if you're looking for something to play. There's no sponsor in this video. This is just me sharing an opinion about some things I've really enjoyed playing that I want to share with you guys. That's about it. So, number one, I'm going to mention this one first because in my opinion, it is a must play. Subnautica. If you have not played Subnautica, Subnautica is basically a open world survival game that is built upon the concept of you crash land onto a planet that's basically just a water world. And the only thing that you have is your wits and a little bit of blueprint know-how to be able to survive. Now, maybe you hear survival game, and this is what turns you off a little bit about it. But there's a percentage of the game that is almost a horror game. There's a percentage of the ambiance and looking around. I mean, you're welcome to look up some gameplay footage of it in order to see, but there's a certain amount of the world environment itself that is scary as a byproduct of the world being properly crafted. For instance, if you got dropped into the middle of the ocean and then had to swim down to where it gets darker, the ocean would be scary. And that's not necessarily because the ocean itself is a horror-based region. It's just a byproduct of the fact that a big open area with lots of big creatures can inherently be kind of scary. And you see, that's what Subnautica does extremely well, is they have the environment itself both be appeasing from the way that a water world can be appeasing with cool tropical fish and, survival style of you have to get fossils and all these different things you have to collect throughout it, but also do the terrifying aspect of it properly. And yes, there's boss fights and there's exploration, and there's a story around it, and there's unlocks that will progress your character that are, similar to any survival game. But in my personal opinion, it's the ambiance and the setting of Subnautica that is hard to do a sales pitch on until you actually experience it yourself. So if you've never played Subnautica, I just want to 100% push you to try the game. It's one of my most enjoyable games. I've gone back and played it multiple times, and I've watched many playthroughs of it just because of how well they do that one thing in particular. Actually, in kind of the same, not really the same genre, but about the setting and sort of survival aspect, I recently played a game called Core Keeper. And Core Keeper is sort of a mix of Terraria, another game I highly recommend, as well as Stardew Valley kind of combined. It's what Carnage described as a survival boss rush, which I think is an absolute fantastic way of describing it. Effectively, the goal of the game is to defeat multiple bosses. And some of the bosses for me actually feel like real boss fights when you're doing the boss. It feels, and not all the way like a PoE boss fight, but it feels more intricate than you would expect from a game of like pixel style graphics. For instance, you got to dodge things. And I'll give you one example. There's a Titan that you got to fight that's a giant bird that's shooting electricity, and you have to dodge a sword like you would dodge like little the blood waves or something like that while you're destroying these rocks that he'll drop that will heal him. And then, of course, you have to DPS the boss in the same time. And there's skill trees, and you can play things like mage, range, melee. There's mining, even running has a skill tree in it as well. So there's fishing too. And then there's the base building aspect of it where people will come and, stay. There will be shops and all that, which is very Terraria-like. And yes, you have crafting tables and things like that. So from a survival aspect, I would say Subnautica from a world environment and exploration and discovery aspect, and Core Keeper from, one, it's a new game. It just released 1.0. And two, from the aspect of like fighting bosses and a little bit more in the survival aspect and building a base and all of that. So these are two games that I highly recommend if you haven't played as well. But obviously, the list isn't going to stop there. I'm going to mention another recent game. This is Deadlock. Now, Deadlock is a game that is sort of a MOBA style, but it is in third person. So if you're not a big MOBA person, you might actually not enjoy this. But if you are someone who has played MOBAs previously, Deadlock is something that sort of mixes almost like a Smite style camera with abilities, with things like from Dota, their MOBA style of like having to kill creeps in order to get, currency, which are called souls in that game as opposed to like gold. But there's like a denying aspect to it. There's itemizations you'll be purchasing as well. Deadlock is a game launched by Valve, and they don't do too many games. And so far, the quality of it seems to be pretty high and is growing in a player base. Now, MOBAs are sort of an older style genre. that maybe not everyone will still enjoy that like they used to. I played League of Legends for many years, for instance, but it's got enough of a new twist on it from the over-the-shoulder perspective and it being sort of a shooter mixed with abilities that actually seems new enough with some familiar mechanics that it does make me go back into the genre in order to play it and still enjoy it a little bit. So maybe you've heard of Deadlock. I actually do recommend this one too. I think this is a quality game if you are someone who either likes shooters or MOBAs. It's more of a MOBA than it is a shooter, however. Now, there's another game that I'm going to call a roguelite. There's actually two roguelites I want to recommend. One is Slay the Spire. This is, I'm just going to talk about very briefly. You pick a character, you build out like a card deck, and it's a pure roguelite if you go through and you pick the rooms you want to explore and you use it to, kill the enemies and become stronger and choose what you're going to buy and sell and all those types of things. Highly recommend Slay the Spire. They actually have it on iPad too. So I was playing on iPad. They have it on mobile. So if you want to like lay on the couch, watch some TV and play it, I actually think Slay the Spire is a big recommendation for me. It's a very, very good game. But there's also another roguelite, which is based upon poker called Balatro or Balatra. I'm not sure how to exactly pronounce it, but Balatro. Highly recommend Balatro. This is a game that is basically, Texas Hold'em. You're going to pick cards and do sets and all of that, three of a kind, full house, all of those types of things. But you'll have modifiers that modify either the score or what your cards do and abilities and all that, like you would expect from a roguelite. And then you will be beating bosses, which is basically you're going to be playing poker in order to do that. And you have to get certain scores, etc. I don't want to spoil too much of how it works because it's actually something that if you like roguelites and you like poker, I think you should just go into basically blind and try it out because you'll be pretty impressed with some of the mechanics. Some of the shop mechanics are really cool too. So I've got some hours into that game off stream. Really big fan of that one as well. So these are just some games that I've been playing recently that I really enjoy, that I want to highly recommend if you're looking for something to play. None of these games I've ever been sponsored by, and I think they're all phenomenal games and don't get talked about as much as they probably should from content creators. Just because, we're always talking about what's new and what's going on. Probably, the Space Marine game or something right now would be something people are talking about. But these are games that have been out for a while that if you have not played are absolutely phenomenal. I'll be live right now. If you want to join, the link will be down below in the description, the pinned comment. Hope you have a wonderful day and let me know if you try the games.